We moved into Willow Creek Estates the day Emily turned 4 months old. From the moment we stepped onto the manicured sidewalk, I felt proud. Safe streets, friendly faces, and the promise of a community we could trust. Emily was as a tiny wonder. Bright eyes, soft coos, and a habit of drifting off to sleep the instant she felt my heartbeat through her swaddle. 2 days later, our HOA president, Mrs. Turner, knocked on the door. Neat hair, crisp blouse, and a clipboard full of rules ready to sign. She introduced herself as Karen, though everyone in our county already whispered her real name, Marjorie Lawson. She welcomed us with a forced smile, handed over binders of bylaws, and congratulated us on our perfect little family. At first, her involvement seemed harmless. She dropped off pastel onesies and organic baby food labeled "From Karen with Love." She volunteered to mow our lawn and offered to babysit when I had errands. I was exhausted. New mom fatigue made her extra help feel like a blessing. It wasn't a blessing. Late one evening, I found a plain envelope slipped under our front mat. Inside, a glossy photo of Emily sleeping in her crib, and a note scrawled in neat handwriting, "They'll come for her soon. I can keep her safe for a price." My heart froze. "Who?" I whispered to Mark, my husband, but he shook his head. "Probably a prank," he said. Then small things began to change. The baby monitor would switch channels on its own. Packages meant for us went missing and reappeared days later, unsealed. I started keeping Emily in her swing when I showered, windows shut even in the heat, and our front door double locked. But Karen still arrived, inconspicuous and insistent. "I'm just looking out for you," she'd say, voice low. "There are people, dangerous people, who pay for babies. They'll pose as nannies." She handed me a business card with a number and the word "contacts." I deleted the note. I changed my voicemail greeting. I refused her offers of help. She responded by slipping in through our unlocked gate one afternoon when Mark was at work. I found the front door ajar, Emily's blanket missing, and Karen's clipboard on the sofa. A witness saw her strolling down our street, baby blanket tucked under her arm. That night I installed cameras. When I watched the footage the next morning, my blood ran cold. At 2:17 a.m., Karen crept through our side gate, cradling Emily as if she'd given birth herself. She spoke on her phone, whispering, "The buyer's sending the truck at dawn. Do they have the money?" Emily cried softly in her arms. Karen shushed her and continued pacing our backyard, phone pressed to her ear. I called the police with shaking hands. At first, they hesitated. Karen's reputation as the model HOA president gave her credibility. But when I showed them the video and the voice recording, everything changed. Within hours, federal agents arrived, canvassing neighbors and seizing Karen's phone and computer. Investigators uncovered a chilling network. Falsified referral forms for child care services, bank accounts holding ransom payments, and a ledger listing infants labeled only by birth month and weight. In a storage unit behind Karen's garage, they found padded crates and shipping manifests for cross-country transport. 6 weeks later, the jury convicted her on charges of human trafficking, conspiracy, and child endangerment. The judge handed down a life sentence without parole. Karen Lawson, once our community's guardian, now sits behind bars for what she did to my baby. Every time I see Emily's smile now, I'm reminded of the darkness hidden beneath a polite face. But I also feel gratitude for the instinct that told me something was wrong and for the swift justice that freed my daughter. The courtroom was silent except for the rustle of papers and the low hum of tension. I sat clutching Mark's hand so tightly my knuckles turned white. Emily was with my sister, safe and calm, but my heart pounded as if she were there beside me. I watched the federal prosecutor outline Karen Lawson's network. Chat logs arranging drop-off points, money transfers disguised as HOA dues, and a chilling spreadsheet listing infants by birth weight and gender. Each detail cut deeper than the last. Behind the glass partition, Karen sat stone-faced in an orange jumpsuit, her once immaculate hair tied back in a loose ponytail. Gone was the prim HOA president with a friendly clipboard. In her place was a woman stripped bare by her own crimes, surrounded by armed guards. At one point, our eyes met. She offered no apology, only a faint, almost apologetic nod. I swallowed bile and looked away. After 2 days of testimonies, the prosecution rested. The defense tried to paint Karen as a well-meaning but misguided protector, someone who misinterpreted the dangers she claimed lurked beyond our fences. They called neighbors who praised her charity work, her block party cupcakes, her volunteer hours. One elderly couple wept on the stand, insisting Karen saved their grandson from a supposedly abusive babysitter. But the jury had seen the evidence. The recorded phone call at 2:17 a.m., Karen pacing our yard with Emily in her arms, the hidden crates, the bank records showing six-figure deposits from shadowy accounts. When closing arguments ended, the judge instructed the jury to deliberate. My stomach knotted into a hard ball. Nausea rose as I wondered if they would let Karen walk free on a technicality, leaving me to relive the worst nights of my life over and over. I gripped Mark's hand until my wrist ached, praying silently for justice. 2 hours later, the jury filed back into the courtroom. We all rose. The four persons stood, held up the verdict form, and read, "Guilty on all counts." A collective exhale shook the room. Relief surged through me so violently I thought I might faint, but Mark grabbed me, held me tight, and whispered, "She's never going to hurt anyone again." Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. I answered as best I could, my voice trembling but steady. I'm grateful to the investigators and prosecutors. This verdict shows that even the kindest-looking face can hide something evil. I didn't want to feed the media circus, so we left quickly, Emily cooing in her stroller, oblivious to the storm she'd inspired. Back home in Willow Creek Estates, the mood had shifted. The tidy lawns and polite waves remained, but I noticed wary glances more than friendly smiles. At the weekly HOA meeting, now under emergency leadership, the board apologized for failing to see Karen's crimes. They announced new safety measures, mandatory background checks for anyone watching children, encrypted HOA messaging to prevent impersonation, and a community task force to report suspicious behavior immediately. Neighbors approached me in small clusters. Some offered casseroles. Others shared their own unsettling stories. A stranger asking about babysitting rates, an unsolicited offer to buy their infant. We realized Karen wasn't the only predator in the world, but her case had ripped away our naivete. We had to remain vigilant. Mark and I spent the next weeks rebuilding our trust in our home. He installed a state-of-the-art security system with doorbell cameras and motion sensors. I joined a local mother's support group where other parents and I swapped safety tips and advice on spotting red flags. For the first time since Karen's betrayal, I felt understood. No one dismissed my fears as mom paranoia. At night, though, peace was elusive. I still jolted awake at phantom footsteps, dreamed I saw Karen's silhouette in the nursery window. I'd rush downstairs, heart racing, only to find the house as empty and silent as the day she was arrested. During the day, glimpses of her still haunted me, a woman pushing a carriage, a volunteer offering candy to passing children. I learned to take a deep breath and remind myself, she's gone. Slowly, life in Willow Creek Estates returned to its gentle rhythm. Emily grew stronger every day, rolling over, babbling, and smiling up at us with bright, trusting eyes. I watched her and remembered how fragile innocence can be, and how fiercely we must guard it. I held her close, whispering promises of safety and love. As the weeks turned into months, the pain of betrayal began to dull. I no longer saw danger in every shadow, though I never forgot the lessons Karen's crimes taught me. I became an advocate for child safety, speaking at community centers and writing articles on recognizing grooming behaviors. My fear transformed into purpose. And still every morning when I tiptoe past Emily's crib, her tiny chest rising and falling with sleep, I thank whatever kept Karen's plan from succeeding. Because of that, my daughter is free to dream, not as a victim, but as a child of light and hope. After the verdict, I thought our worst days were behind us. In truth, they had only shifted. The immediate danger had passed, but the aftermath settled on our home like a heavy fog. Every creak in the floorboards made me freeze. Every ring of the doorbell sent my pulse racing. I found myself checking on Emily dozens of times a day, counting her breaths, smoothing her blankets, replaying the video of Karen cradling her in the dark. Recovery started in small moments. I remember the first time I felt genuine relief, a cool spring morning when Emily slept past 6 o'clock without stirring. I tiptoed into her room, heart fluttering, and watched her chest rise and fall. That single peaceful breath felt like a victory. One weekend, Mark surprised me with breakfast in bed. He placed a tray on my lap, fresh fruit, scrambled eggs, and coffee still steaming, and told me he'd booked a family photo shoot. "We need to capture this," he said softly. "Remember the good parts." So we hired a local photographer who specializes in newborns and families recovering from trauma. In the bright, sunlit studio, Emily giggled as she tried to grab a fuzzy bunny. We smiled together in the pictures, ordinary joy frozen in time. Seeing those images reminded me that life could still be about light and laughter. In our neighborhood, trust took longer to rebuild. The new HOA board offered a meet your neighbor brunch in the community hall. I almost stayed home, terrified of crowds, but Mark gently pulled me out the door. I clutched Emily's stroller, scanning every face, waiting for someone to judge or stare. Instead, neighbors approached us with kindness. Mrs. Alvarez, who once stood silent behind her hedge, hugged me and said, "You're safe here." Mr. Thompson from 3 doors down brought Emily a jar of homemade baby food. Even the quiet families we barely knew smiled and nodded as we passed. Slowly, I started volunteering at the neighborhood playgroup. I listened to young moms talk about diaper blowouts and sleepless nights, simple struggles that felt like blessings compared to what we'd endured. When one mother mentioned suspicious texts from an unknown number offering premium childcare, I offered a warning. If something feels off, trust your gut and lock your doors. They listened, and I realized my experience, as horrific as it was, could help protect others. I also found strength in therapy. My counselor helped me reframe my thoughts. Instead of waiting for danger, I practiced noticing safety. We created a peace ritual each evening, lighting a lavender candle, saying 3 things we were grateful for, and placing a soft hand on Emily's chest as she drifted to sleep. On hard nights, I'd whisper our promises to her. "You are safe. You are loved. You belong here." By mid-year, summer arrived. Barbecue grills, sprinkler fights, and late sunsets. I pushed Emily on a swing in my front yard, watching her squeal with delight as droplets of water sparkled in the sun. Karen's old house stood empty across the street, its windows dark and weeds creeping up the driveway. But I no longer saw it as a looming threat. I saw it as a remnant of a nightmare we'd survived. One evening, our family hosted a small block party. String lights twinkled between maple trees, and children ran barefoot through the grass. I stood by the lemonade table, Emily in my arms, and felt laughter rise around me. For the first time in months, I didn't flinch at every shout or shout of the ice cream truck's bell. Instead, I let myself join in, cheering as the kids raced down the driveway, clapping when someone won the pie eating contest. After the party, I tucked Emily into her crib under a soft blanket. I paused at her door, watching her smile in her sleep. My heart felt full, not heavy. Karen's crimes had taught me pain, but they had also taught me resilience. We weren't just victims, we were survivors. And in that moment, I believed we could heal completely. A year has passed since the jury pronounced Karen Lawson guilty. In that time, every sunrise has felt like a gift, hard-won and precious. Emily, now 16 months old, toddles around our living room with unsteady but determined steps, her laughter echoing like music through the halls we fought so hard to protect. Spring returned to Willow Creek Estates in full bloom. Daffodils nodded along the sidewalks, and magnolia petals drifted like soft snow. Our house, once a fortress of locks and alarms, became a home again. Mark hung wind chimes on the porch, and I planted tulips in the flower bed where nightmares once took root. Each bloom felt like a small victory. Emily's routine settled into gentle rhythms. Mornings began with her babbling at the baby monitor, calling for me with a soft "mama." I'd scoop her into my arms, feeling the warmth of her body against mine, proof that love, not malice, defines motherhood. Breakfast meant mashed bananas and yogurt, followed by crawl races on the living room rug. Afternoons we spent under the old oak tree in our backyard, watching butterflies flit among the daisies. Though our family found peace, the scars lingered. I still flinch at sudden knocks on the door. I still glance at every volunteer offering lemonade or freshly baked cookies. But now, I smile and say thank you, trusting my instincts to guide when to welcome and when to keep my guard up. Karen's empty home down the street, sold at auction last fall, stands with dark windows sealed shut, a silent reminder of how close we came to tragedy. In the neighborhood, vigilance became compassion. The new HOA board organized monthly Safe Streets workshops. Parents gathered in the community hall to learn about digital safety, stranger awareness techniques, and trauma support for children. I volunteered as a speaker, sharing my story plainly: the soft blankets, the whispered promises, the video that saved my daughter. I spoke without vengeance, only with the urgency of a mother determined to spare others the same pain. At one workshop, a young mom raised her hand, voice trembling. "I almost let someone I trusted babysit," she admitted. Heads nodded in understanding. Together, we drafted a simple pledge: verify before you trust, ask questions, share concerns. We printed it on bright paper and taped it to every mailbox. It became our neighborhood creed. Emily grew stronger each day. On her second birthday, we held a small party under the maple tree. Balloons bobbed in the breeze, and children chased bubbles across the lawn. I watched her blow out 2 tiny candles, her eyes shining with pure wonder. I thought of how Karen had tried to snuff out that light, and I squeezed Mark's hand, grateful that justice had protected our daughter's future. As dusk settled, I tucked Emily into her crib, humming a lullaby. I placed a soft hand on her chest, feeling the steady rise and fall that once seemed so fragile. I whispered, "You are safe, you are loved, you are home." Outside, the wind chimes tinkled, carrying our promises into the night. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, small fears and big hopes, but we have learned that healing is built on each new morning. And as long as I breathe, I will guard Emily's world with every ounce of my strength. The end.